Yeah, there we go.
Picture was better.
Susan, I know you're with us. Nagma, nice to see you're with us. Milan is here. David Kaplan, welcome. It's starting to slow down now, so we're going to have it just another minute. And then we're going to start. Let me see.
Steve, will you tell us what pages we're on or what?
Of course. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Which just, I just want to see how we're doing. Hannah, can you hear me? Does it look like everyone's in pretty much?
Yeah, it looks like we've kind of topped off for right now.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Good to see everyone again. And let's just remember to mute unless talking, okay? Because that will prevent echoes for all of us. And that way we won't hear your cell phone conversations during the Torah study, which I know never happens ever. Okay, so to begin, this is last week, just to remind everyone, we focused on one of the Torah portions for Rosh Hashanah, the Akedah, the story of the binding of Isaac. And today we're going to look at the Torah portion for Yom Kippur morning, which is called Atem Nitzavim. And if you have a Tanakh, if you have a Bible there, it is Deuteronomy 29, verse 9. That's where it stands. If you don't have a Bible, just Google it on your phone or your laptop. Deuteronomy 29, 9. This is a pretty short Torah portion. It's just 2 chapters, and so we're gonna have time to talk about more than just a couple of things, I hope. So let me just give everyone a minute to find that. Drive carefully, Deborah. Deborah's listening, driving. So what a world, huh? I gotta say, I love Zoom. I miss seeing all of you in Century City, but it's really pretty great.
Is it the prologue or the second discourse?
It starts on verse 9, 29, 9. It starts with Atem Nitzavim Hayom. You stand this day, all of you. Okay, so I'm going to assume everybody's there, right? Michael, welcome. Ellen, Maxine, Barry. Okay, all right. Panina, good to see you. Jennifer, hi there. Barry, good to see you. Okay, all right. Let's jump in. So this is the Torah portion for Yom Kippur morning. It's going to be pretty obvious why in a couple of minutes. And it is, it has within it one extremely radical idea that we're going to spend some time on toward the end. And it has within it, actually, I don't know if the first idea that we're going to talk about is a radical idea, but it's definitely fundamental to Judaism. It's literally the reason you're all participating today in this Zoom and studying Torah. And I'll explain what I mean when we get a little bit of the text behind us. So Marty, I see you're there. Unmute. Marty's going to read for us in just a minute, but first we're all going to say the blessing together. For those of you who might not remember it, it goes the way all Jewish blessings go until you get to the end, and the last 3 words are la'asok b'divrei Torah. La'asok b'divrei Torah. Actually, I'm going to get all millennial on you and go la'asok b'divrei Torah. And I put it in the chat, okay? So you can see it. So please join me. Baruch atah Adonai. Oh, everybody on mute. Everyone on mute. Everyone on mute. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav b'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, who commands us to busy ourselves with the Torah. Okay? All right. So here we go. Verse 9. Marty, take it away. Unmute first.
Let's see. Now are we okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. You stand this day, all of you, before the Lord your God, your tribal heads, your elders, and your officials, all the men of Israel, your children, your wives, even the stranger within your camp, from wood chopper to water drawer, to enter into the covenant of the Lord your God, which the Lord your God is concluding with you this day, with its sanctions, to the end that he may establish you this day as his people and be your God, as he promised you and as he swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Okay.
Make this covenant.
Wait, stop, Marty. Stop.
Okay.
Because we're going to break this down a little bit. I'm going to restate. I'm going to recant. There are more than two radical ideas in this Torah portion, and we've just heard one. Does anyone want to take a guess? Think about this list. And anybody want to take a guess at why this might be a radical idea? Ruth Mills, go ahead, unmute.
I'm guessing because it includes the stranger that is in the midst of your camp.
That's one. Who else does it include?
Wives, children, workers.
What kind of workers?
The hewer of thy wood unto the drawer of thy water.
Yeah. Now the rabbis say that refers, to Abraham, who was the hewer of wood. But what it really is clearly is that everyone in society has an equal role in the covenant of Torah and the Jewish people. And that might not sound like much to you, but this is in contradistinction to Greco-Roman values, to pagan values, where access to the religious wisdom and tradition was an esoteric endeavor, and the privy of only a handful of the enlightened leadership. And here you have the democratization of Judaism. Everybody counts. Everybody matters. Doesn't matter if you're the gardener, if you're the president, male, female, transgender, black, white, something in between. It doesn't matter. Everyone is a shareholder, an equal shareholder in this endeavor, this enterprise of Torah and Judaism. That is a massive move forward, in my opinion. And it really distinguishes Judaism. Now, there is a hierarchy. Yes, we had kings and we had prophets and we had priests, but everybody was equally responsible and entitled. And this goes to a much bigger idea in Judaism, which is really profound, which is that Judaism does not ascribe relative value to life. Let me say that again. Judaism does not ascribe relative value to life. Everyone's life is of equal value. It does not matter if you have 10 decades left to live or 10 minutes left to live. Your life is of equal value to every other life. This is why, by the way, I got into a little bit of trouble over this. And I don't know how everyone on this call is going to feel about what I'm about to say, but I would at least like you to understand why I said it. This is why I will not only say that Black Lives Matter. Absolutely, Black Lives Matter. And I say that with a full heart, but I won't only say that, because from a Jewish perspective, it's a half truth, right? And you know the old Yiddish expression, a half truth is a whole lie, right? It's not the whole story. And this is also why, for example, euthanasia is such a difficult subject. Active euthanasia is such a difficult subject from a Jewish legal perspective, because who's to say when a person's life is no longer of value, or any given person's life is of lesser value? And this is a really difficult problem. And then I see my friend Karen Broidy's on here, who I know sits on the ethics committee at Cedars, where you actually do have to assign relative value to life when you have to decide, who gets the heart, who gets the kidney, who gets the ventilator. This is completely antithetical to Judaism, and yet there are times when reality forces us to create relative value. Just to remind everyone, Deuteronomy chapter 29, starting with verse 9, okay? But here you have very early in the Torah, well, it's toward the end of the Torah, but very early in Jewish history, this democratization of Judaism. And I think that's a big idea. Any comments, any questions? I'm going to try and just flip through the screen. Yeah, Jennifer, go ahead.
Hey, and thank you. Wonderful. And to everybody, comments as well. It just seems to distribute the people from you have the priests. I've just lost my place, of course, because I was,
Take your time.
I read back forwards a little. The idea that he's choosing everyone, your tribal heads, your elders, officials, and of course, all the children wives, but these all will bring to this covenant a unique kind of wisdom particular to them, which will
That's right.
help. And so everyone's knowledge as well as lives and experience is valuable.
Yes, that's absolutely true. But wait, there's more. Okay, Marty? Are you with me?
No, I am.
Okay. All right. So verse 13 and 14, the next really profound idea. Go ahead.
I make this covenant with its sanctions, not with you alone, but with those who are standing here with us this day before the Lord our God, and with those who are not with us this day.
Okay, full stop. What's really being said there? Yeah, Ben, go ahead. Ben Goldfarb.
Thank you, Rabbi. Simply everybody's included. These are
which everybody? What does it mean, those who are not here this day? How do we understand that?
Future births, future generations.
Yeah, exactly. Future generations. Now, this is nice work, gold star. Now, this becomes a flashpoint for some of the rabbis. Why? Well, part of the view is that how can one generation bind future generations to a covenant that they weren't there to agree to in the first place? How democratic, how fair is that? How is that even possible? And this is pushed back against by the rabbis in two different ways. Okay, the first way is, well, this is kind of a straw man. This is like if your father borrowed money and dies, you're on the note, right? You're obligated for the father's responsibilities. Okay, and so just like that, if your ancestors made a commitment to God to be faithful to Torah, that commitment binds the next generations to follow. Okay. Now, this is pushed back on by another group of rabbis who say, well, a child can refuse his or her inheritance, and then they don't owe the money, right? So that gets done away with pretty quickly. The next sort of move in this is, first of all, let me say something that is obvious, I think, to all of us if we think about it. In certain ways, we are committed because of decisions made by previous generations, right? We're all living where we're living because of decisions made by our ancestors. We all have a certain DNA because of decisions made by our ancestors who came before us to marry this person and not that person, whatever it may be. You know, I'm in Los Angeles because my grandfather decided, you know, to get on a train in Russia. So in certain ways, obviously, the fix is in for us physically, geographically, psychologically. You know, we do inherit things because of other people's decisions. The Bible says the parents eat sour grapes and the children's teeth are set on edge, right? In other words, that's why we're all in therapy, because our parents ate sour grapes and we're gnashing our teeth, all right? But this is more than that. This is commitment to the covenant between the Jewish people and God. And we're going to find out like exactly what is this, because that's a really important word. Verse 13, I make this covenant. We're going to get to that next. What exactly does that mean? What does this covenant mean? And we'll get to that in a few minutes. But let me give you sort of the next move, and then I'm going to take some comments. And I know Lisa and Gordon, you both had your hands up. The next sort of move in Talmud really is that every Jew is bound to this covenant a priori because it's all payback for being freed from Egypt. That when, think about the first commandment, for example, which is really a statement, not a commandment. The first of the 10 commandments, it says, I'm the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods, who led you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. You shall have no other gods before me. So this idea of being bound to the ideas of the Torah goes for forever bound. The rabbis see this as you were freed from slavery by God, and you are therefore obligated to now serve God, not the Pharaoh. We are all, you know, we are all God's servants. I would say slaves, but it has such a negative connotation. But let me put it this way, from the rabbi's point of view, God is our master, because we were all at Sinai. We were all freed from Egypt. Remember what the Haggadah says, right? Every Jew should see him or herself as if he or she, right, was a slave rescued by God. And so the rabbis kind of fit this whole thing under the umbrella of this is an obligation that can never, ever, ever be fully completed. And it binds every Jew of every sort, everywhere. Okay, let me take a few comments if we have them. Gordon, what were you going to say? Unmute. Panina, I saw your hand too. We'll get to you.
I had two questions.
Yeah.
Does it cover those of us in the general community as well as the Jewish community? And if it does, are we responsible for African-American reparations dating back to the Civil War?
The first issue is it does cover strangers, right? So the answer is yes, that they are also obligated. Now, there are certain, in the Torah, there are certain commandments that apply only to Jews. And then there are some that apply to everyone. The ones that apply to everyone, for example, are called the Noahide commandments. So the answer is yes, you're part of the deal, but the deal has different clauses for Jews and non-Jews. Okay. But it gets even more complicated, which we'll get to in a minute. Then the question is, are we responsible for reparations? And I can't give you a good Jewish answer for that. I've thought about it quite a bit. You know that Germany paid a lot of reparations to help Israel get on its feet. That's why in the 50s and 60s, pretty much every taxi and bus was a Mercedes. That was part of the reparations deal. So there is history within the Jewish community of deserving and receiving reparations. I think part of the question is, does that go back 350 years or not? You know, is there a statute of limitations on reparations? So to be honest, Gordon, it's a thorny question and issue I just don't feel qualified to respond to. Lisa.
Sorry. Hi, can you hear me?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm not that good with Zoom. So this may be an overreach, but what this reminded me of, you know, my dad used to say sometimes walking around the house, this house is not a democracy. And he would say that because, yes, I was allowed to do everything and we're a modern family and I went away to school and all that, but certain things non-negotiable. Right. And I think what it reminds me of, because I became a caregiver for my mother, and I always felt that becoming a caregiver was part of my Jewish continuum. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just because I loved her and she needed the help. I really saw it as going all the way back. Yes. To what you're talking about. And so what I think is interesting is the idea that it sounds like we're being given a choice of what to do, but like within the choice, there is no choice.
I think that's right. I think, well, look,
instinctively Jewish, like I said, there were certain things, you know, non-negotiable. And and I felt that, like, when my mom got ill, to me, even though it was a royal pain for a million reasons, it never felt negotiable for me.
Well, from the view of the rabbis, we are all a priori obligated. And in that sense, you're right. In that sense, you're right. And we have no excuse, which we'll get to later. Okay. Penina and then Miriam, and then I want to move on. Go ahead, Penina.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to the commandment of honor your father and your mother.
Right.
And what is the essence of this whole commandment? I think it also relates to this sentence that we have to remember all the past generations, the future generation. It says, כבד את אביך ואת אמך, למען יאריכון ימיך על האדמה, אשר אני נותן לך.
Right. So let me just translate. Honor your father and mother so that you may long remain on the land.
Yeah, but I want to stress the word honor. The word doesn't really mean just to honor. The word kabed means heavy. It means that when you have to carry for somebody, it's a heavy burden, not a burden, a heavy duty. Something that you have to do physically that will be heavy. Wash their feet, feed them, take care of them. And the reason that they give is למען יאריכון ימיך על האדמה, is that your children are going to watch what you're doing and they're going to do the same for you.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it goes back to also that sentence that we see now, that we have to remember the past generations also, because they taught us a lot. And they are the base of us being here. So it connects to this idea that when they mention generations, it actually affects you personally, even if they are not there anymore.
Yeah, good point.
That sentence, כבד את אביך ואת אמך למען יאריכון ימיך על פני האדמה, carries a lot of heavy duty and meaning.
Yeah, and I might point out, thank you, Penina. I would point out that it also doesn't matter if you love your parents or not. It doesn't say love your father and mother. It says honor them, carry them.
Well,
right?
It's the teaching that it teaches the future generations. They watch what you do and they repeat what you do, hopefully.
Yeah.
And it's all good, hopefully.
That's why we haven't put our old dog down yet.
Exactly. Well,
okay, let's go. Okay. Miriam, Miriam, and then, one point Brad asked, is this in tandem with the idea that punishments in the Torah extend to future generations? Absolutely, yes, without a doubt. You're starting to see why we read this on Yom Kippur morning, right? Okay, Miriam, go ahead, and then we're going to move on. Unmute, Miriam. Go ahead.
Rabbi, I want to thank you for bringing up the difficult subject of reparations for the Black Americans today.
Well, I didn't bring it up. I just avoided it, but go ahead.
No, but you did mention the words, and I think that we need to hear them again and again, even though we have not come to a resolution about it, and perhaps we cannot and may not or will not or whatever. Nevertheless, we need to think of it, because I personally do not accept that easy irresponsibility. Well, what are you talking about? I wasn't there. As though that answers the question. I feel responsible. I feel there is something very concrete we must do, whether it's college, education, whatever you want to call it. I feel we owe this to them. I also feel that nobody knows really, except some of us that have read the real histories. It's not in the children's education.
Okay, we got it.
Horribly retreated.
We got it. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you. Yeah, I think the question, I have a question as to whether or not it will really address the root issues, but who knows? I think we could spend a lot of time on this, and I am completely unqualified to lead that conversation. I wish I knew more. Okay, now let's go to the next question. Okay, and Marty already read this. Look at verse 13. Look at it carefully. I make this covenant with its sanctions, not with you alone, but both those who are standing here and those who are not. We already got to those who are standing here and who are not. But what is the this? What is I make this covenant? Okay. Is it, well, let me just jump you ahead. Okay. I want to jump ahead to chapter 30. And I'm just going to read this quickly. Marty, please forgive me. Look at chapter 30, verse 1. When all these things befall you, the blessing and the curse that I've set before you, and you take them to heart amidst the various nations to which the Lord your God has banished you. Now listen carefully. And you return, shuv, teshuvah, and you return to the Lord your God, and you and your children heed his command with all your heart and soul, just as I enjoin upon you this day. Then the Lord your God will return your fortunes and take you back in love. He will bring you together again from all the peoples where the Lord has scattered you. Even if your outcasts are at the ends of the world, from there the Lord again will gather you up, and he will fetch you, and he will bring you to the land which your ancestors occupied, and you shall occupy it, etc., etc., etc. Okay? Then the Lord your God will open up your heart and the hearts of your offspring to love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul, in order that you may live. The Lord your God will inflict curses upon the enemies and foes. You, however, will again heed the Lord, obey his commandments, which I enjoin you, and the Lord your God will grant you abounding prosperity in all of your undertakings, etc., etc., since you will be heeding the Lord your God and keeping his commandments and laws that are recorded in this book of the teaching, once you return to the Lord your God with all your heart and soul. Now, again, you can see why we read this on Yom Kippur morning. In 10 verses, the word return, shuv, teshuvah, is mentioned 7 times. This idea, this is a major, powerful, radical idea. Okay, and let me get a little geeky. Okay, I'm gonna little inside baseball, rabbi baseball for you. Okay, this relates to how the rabbis answer this question. What is the this? What is this covenant? Specifically, what are we all obligated to? And many of the rabbis, not most, but I would say Nachmanides is the leader on this. His view is that it's this idea of teshuvah that we're all obligated to. That's the this that God is referring to when God says, I make this covenant not with you alone. It's teshuvah. It is the opportunity and the obligation to make things right, to change, to get back on the path if you have gone astray. That's what God is asking and demanding of us, to use Lisa's idea of, Lisa, my dad used to say, the boss isn't always right, but he's still the boss. I really hated that. So Nachmanides says, this is what we're all talking about here. This is why we read it on Yom Kippur morning. This is a message from God saying, you are never absolved of the obligation to try to change for the better, to make things right, to make peace. Now, why is that such a big deal? Again, in contradistinction to the pagan worldview. The pagan worldview was that people did not change, could not change, and that life never changed. That reality was a drama, a cyclical drama played out generation after generation after generation, and it never changed. In other words, if a pagan was alive today, the pagan would say to us, oh, you guys are all just the new cast in the same drama that was played out before you were born. Costumes have changed, but the script is identical. People are people, societies are societies, and it never changes. That was paganism. And here you have the Torah coming and saying, whether this is the this or not, no, you can change. You can change your direction. And Judaism, if you really think about it deeply, Judaism is linear. In other words, traditional Jews are positioning themselves in time in relation to a future event, the coming of the Messiah, the redemption of the world. It's not a circle, it's linear. And we have choices. We can change. We can say the three most difficult words for human beings to say, which, by the way, is not I am sorry. Because any of us who've been married know that I am sorry can mean a lot of things, and it doesn't always cut it, right? I'm sorry you feel that I meant. I'm sorry if you thought. I'm sorry I said that, but, I'm sorry has a lot of wiggle room. The three hardest, most difficult words for most people to say are, I was wrong. Full stop. I was wrong. Right? And the Bible, you see this in the Bible. Cain kills Abel, right? First two brothers on the planet. Cain kills Abel. And God says, Cain, where's your brother Abel? And what does he say? How should I know? Am I my brother's keeper? He lies. Right? Adam eats of the apple. What's he do? He blames it on Eve. What does she do? She blames, bless you. She blames it on the snake, right? Nobody steps up and says, I was wrong. Judah in the Bible does when he fesses up about Tamar and he says, it's mine. The baby's mine. So you have human nature here in the Bible that we all like to point to someone else. The architect points to the contractor and the contractor points to the architect, right? If you've ever had two children, I remember one time when the kids were little and I wasn't in the den, and all of a sudden Hannah's crying in the den. And I walk in and I say, what happened? And Aaron, he was probably about 5 years old. He says, I didn't hit her. She ran into my fist. Yeah. So I was wrong. And now this is a massive, massive concept. And this is what at least Nachmanides believes that this is in the I make this covenant with you this day. Now, the other rabbis, we'll get to questions again in a couple of minutes. The majority of the sages in the Talmud, they don't see it that way. Okay? They see it as this meaning the entirety of the Torah, the whole thing. I make this covenant with you is God saying, you are accepting the entire Torah, not only for yourselves, but for all the generations to follow. And there's a citation in the Talmud where that is made crystal clear, where the rabbis say, you must set regular times to study the Torah. And then the proof text, the piece of Torah they use to prove that is from this Torah portion, and we're going to get to that proof text in a minute. So I just want to be clear. The minority opinion is it's teshuvah that we're all obligated for. The majority opinion is it's the whole Torah. Of course, that includes teshuvah, but it includes many other things. Okay, let's take some comments if we have them. Let me see. Okay, I guess not. Yeah, Pamela, go ahead. Unmute them. There you go.
Yeah, got it. Well, I was just wondering, in terms of like the linear return and then not the fixed circle, but contrast to the pagan, yes. I'm wondering how that relates to like karma and like the other religions that were around at the time, right? So karma and reincarnation and all that kind of stuff. It's such a good question. And I'm going to try to explain a complicated feeling as simply as I can. Okay, so about 10 years ago, I was in India. And I went there with American Jewish World Service to volunteer working in the slums in Mumbai for a couple of weeks. And I don't care what kind of homelessness you have seen in Los Angeles or America, it does not compare to what exists in India. It is beyond your imagination. It's one of those things where you're looking at it and you cannot believe your eyes. And I remember being amazed. We rolled into this slum in a white Mercedes SUV and got out, and everyone was so incredibly kind and gentle and welcoming us. And you know, I was shocked because I thought to myself, if I rolled into some neighborhoods in Los Angeles like this, I for sure wouldn't have a car when I got back. And, you know, I might be met with violence and real anger. People seem so at peace with their lot. And the reason for that is they view their station in life as their dharma, as their role in that generation's drama. And if they just play their role well, if you're just a really good rag picker and poor person in this life, you will come back. If you learn what that station in life has to teach you, you will come back in your next life atop the next rung on the ladder. Now, this is insidious to me. Why? Because it's obviously this system enables people to bear their suffering because they view it as, in a way, temporary. But it also enables the rich to absolve themselves entirely of any responsibility for the poor, because that's their dharma, that's their role. When they learn everything there is to learn from that role, they will come back in a different role. I have nothing, who am I to tinker or affect the drama?
I'm playing my role. And so the very system that enables people to bear their suffering also locks them into their suffering. And that's karma, and that's dharma. And it is extremely disturbing. It was for me, enormously disturbing to witness. And so I have to say it gave me yet again and an even deeper appreciation for this radical idea that the Jews brought to the world, that things can change, people can change, we can make change, create change, be changed. This is a very powerful idea. The idea, as you know, the prayer book puts it, that we are not prisoners of yesterday's ways. Very powerful. And again, you can see why this Torah portion is so perfect for, the morning of Yom Kippur. Okay, we're going to move on. Any other questions? Hands? That was, Susan, go ahead. And then we're going to move to the last little piece of text.
This is a little off the topic, but I've
It's
always considered the this chapter 30, when I will bring you, so restore your fortunes, take you back and bring you to, I always think that as the founding of Israel.
Well, again and again, right? There's definitely been more than one founding.
Yeah, more than one.
Right. And always in rabbinic literature and in Torah, whether or not we are in possession of the land of Israel is an indicator of God's pleasure or displeasure with the Jewish people. Always. So, that's definitely a strong sort of philosophical point of view. But here you have this idea that we will always be welcomed back, right? You can always come home. Just be faithful to this covenant, and God will take you back. I don't know who said it. Somebody said home is the place where when you go there, they have to let you in. I don't know who that was, but it's a great line. Home is the place that when you go there, they have to let you in. So that's God. When we do turn, we're welcomed back. All right, I want to move on to the last little piece of text because we've only got about, 10 we've got 15 minutes left. Okay, so let me see where I want to start. I want to make a point about verse 6. Chapter 30, verse 6. Everybody with me there? Then the Lord your God will open up your heart and the hearts of your offspring to love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul, in order that you may live. Okay. I think this is a significant verse because, to put it very simply, it means that God meets us halfway. In the minds of the authors of Torah, if God is the one who's opening our hearts, it means that God's willing to meet us halfway. That we turn 90 degrees. We don't turn 180 degrees. We turn 90. If we turn 180 degrees, we're right back where we started. So that this idea of teshuvah is both us turning toward God and God turning toward us. And I don't care how you understand God. If you understand God as metaphor, as science, as nature, it doesn't really matter. It's this idea of mutuality, of relationship, of brit, of covenant. A covenant definitionally involves two parties, both of which have obligations. It's a contract. And that implies mutuality. And here again, this is a completely radical break from paganism. Because in paganism, human beings were the playthings of the gods, and the gods owed human beings nothing. Zero. And here we have mutual obligation. And I think that's another, I think we have a half a dozen of the most significant Jewish insights brought to humankind in 2 chapters here. And of course, Teshuvah takes 2 parties, right? Think about that. You can't repent alone. You have to engage with that other person. You have to say these things out loud. You have to meet face to face and have that conversation. Okay, Lisa, and then Penina, and then Miriam, and then we're going to go to our last text. Okay, Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. This is probably a question for much later down the road, but if we have a mutual relationship with God who meets us halfway, of course, at some point we have to discuss the periods where it felt like God did not meet us halfway, and we know what those are.
Well, you know what an Orthodox rabbi would say, right?
What would he say? No.
You didn't meet God halfway.
Right. I understand. But the Orthodox rabbi also didn't get degrees in social science. So I have a different perception.
Exactly.
So at some point, maybe at some point in my relationship to the temple, I'd love to discuss that.
No, we do need to talk about theodicy, and we will. But go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's it. That was just my question.
Yes.
That was it.
Yes. Sometimes God seems to be missing. Yeah. There's a really interesting book about that called Facing an Abusing God. It's by Blumenthal.
Okay.
I think he's at what's the university in Atlanta? Emory. I think he's at Emory. I think it's Richard Blumenthal. I'm not positive about that. Facing an Abusing God. You should read that. I think you'll be very interested in it, and we can talk about it. Now, Penina, and then Miriam. Okay, go ahead, Penina.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, all right. 3 words come to my mind before the holidays, and it used to be on a poster that came up in my classroom right away before the high holidays came. תפילה, תשובה, תפילה וצדקה. מבטלים את רוע הגזרה. Now, you have to understand what these 3 words really means grammatically. The word tshuva, it means that you repent, right? You come back. It's to come back.
You return. Right. You return.
Right. And you also recognize your wrongdoings.
Yes.
Okay. So lashuv is to return. So you go back and you weigh your own actions. Tefillah is once you say whatever it is that you say to the person, like forgive me or whatever I did. Palol means to stand in judgment, like bet mishpat plili. That's like the high court. It comes from the word to judge. So so you're actually standing now in judgment, not only because of God, but in the eyes of the person that you did.
Right, Penina, I don't want to rush you, but what is the point?
The point is that then you have tefillah. Okay, so you stayed in judgment. It's tzedakah. Now you have to do something good to pay back or to show that you really reprimand. Okay. Now, all those things are supposed to help to observe you. Now, if you ask the person 3 times to forgive you and the person doesn't forgive you, the bad is on him.
Correct. The only thing I would say, Penina, is that it says ma'avirin et roa hagzera. It does not say ma'avirin et hagzera hara'a. So it does not necessarily change what happens to you if you live a generous, prayerful life. I'm actually preaching about this on Rosh Hashanah morning this year, that the point of that prayer is not to help us avoid pain. The point of that prayer is to teach us how to live with pain.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to move on now, Miriam, and then we're going to get to my final text. Where are you? Miriam left us.
Yes, a very quick question. A second fix bothers me a bit, perhaps you can help me with. It doesn't use the word God will open your heart. It's a very interesting word in Hebrew. Mal from Greek Ma.
Yeah, we'll circumcise.
Circumcise the heart.
Yeah.
Open it.
Cut it open.
Okay. Now, why do you think they chose that word?
Well,
so interesting.
It sounds like somebody's raking along there. Go on mute because there's some background noise there, Miriam, and then I'll give you my answer. Okay. Okay, good. It does say circumcise your heart, or remove, in another place, remove the thickening around your heart. I think open is a perfectly good word, but you're correct that technically it's to circumcise your heart. But I think the intent is certainly that it removes this thickening, this thick layer around your heart. It opens you up. I'll tell you something quite beautiful as an aside, which some of you have probably heard me say before, but I think it's so beautiful. There's this verse that God puts words upon our hearts. And the rabbis ask, why upon and not in? I mean, if God can put words upon our hearts, certainly God can put words in our hearts. And the answer the sages give is that God puts words upon our hearts, but they don't enter until our hearts are broken. I think that's so beautiful, that until we are broken, we really don't achieve empathy in the truest sense of the word. And that when we ourselves have been broken, that's when we become truly empathetic human beings, in a way more whole when broken. Okay, let's go on now to the final little piece that I want to talk about. Let's go to verse 11. Marty, are you still with us?
I'm there.
Okay. Let's go verses 11 through 14. Here we go.
Okay. Surely this institution, which I
instruction
today, is not too baffling for you, nor it is beyond reach. It is not in the heavens that you should say, who among us can go up to the heavens and get it for us and impart it to us that we may observe it. Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who among us can cross to the other side of the sea and get it for us and impart it to us that we may observe it. No, the thing is very close to you, in your mouth and in your heart, to observe it. Okay, now I want to go back to Nachmanides, who you'll remember I said is the minority opinion, that the this in I make this covenant with you today is teshuvah. Okay, let's say I personally agree with that point of view. I think that's why, in many ways, this Torah portion was chosen for Yom Kippur morning. But these verses, it's not too baffling for you. For goodness sakes, I made this deal with the children, the wood chopper, the water drawer. Nor is it beyond reach. It's not in heaven. It's not esoteric knowledge in heaven that you have to be some kind of transcendent being to access. And it's not beyond the sea, unreachable, a sea that you can't get across to observe it. No. In other words, the Torah here is removing every excuse. If you're Nachmanides, removing every excuse for not doing tshuva, for not trying to make things right. There is no excuse, because there are times when certain mitzvot in the Torah are impossible to observe. There are. And there are some that apply only to men, and some that apply only to women, and some that apply only to slaves. But the thing that all of us, no matter who we are or where we are, that all of us can and should do is to turn toward God and toward the people we've harmed and to try to make it right. And that is something accessible to all of us, and there is no excuse. There's no, but Rabbi, you don't know how awful she was to me. Or no, Rabbi, it won't matter. He'll say it, but he won't mean it. Or, Rabbi,
I don't know, she's in New York and I'm never going to see her again. There is no excuse. And it's in your mouth and in your heart. It's what you say and how you feel. And so I'm going with Nachmanides this Yom Kippur. I'm not going with this idea that it's the entire Torah, because frankly, for all of us on this call, there are parts of the entire Torah that are too difficult and are too much of a reach and that we don't understand and that we're not going to do. But if we think of this idea of this as teshuvah, that if our hearts and souls are in the right place is something that every one of us can achieve. And with that, I'm going to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for being with me today. Okay. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. By the way, services at 6 o'clock tonight at University. Please join us if you'd like or watch online. Okay. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom,
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.